resume basics, and then after I'm done with the basics, then we're going to get into the guts of how to do this, and I'll show you some resumes. All right. How many typos are acceptable on your resume? 0. Okay. Why would I even have to say that to a crowd like this? Because, you ever heard of something called a warm document? When you've been working on your resume and you've changed it 5, 10,000 times, your eyeball just sort of glosses over stuff, doesn't it? This is why typos happen, not because you're not good spellers, right? It's because your eye literally will not catch it. You need to read it not only top to bottom, but bottom to top. You have to have other people for whom the document is cold to read it. By the way, that goes with thank you letters. In fact, let me just say, I have seen executives of the highest level make typos on their thank you letters. Because thank you letters are something that you do quickly. You come back from the interview, you're typing it up, you want to get it all right, boom. Misspellings of the name of the interviewer, miss semicolons, I've seen everything, okay? No, really, really constant. Anytime you touch an employer, make sure that it is absolutely spotless. All right, people ask me sometimes, should I send my resume in Word or PDF? Well, you would think PDF. Why? Why would you think PDF?
Can't change it.
You can't change it, right? Well, here's the issue with a PDF. Sometimes we need to change it. Sometimes we recruiters actually need to write on it, or we need to do something. We will give you permission, but at the end of the day, we need to write. Send it in Word. Honestly, I would not worry as much about that. Now, you could, if you want to be safe about it, you can send both. So you can have one that's unchangeable, so that we can always have a record, but always give us one that is customizable. Also, on smartphones, it's a little bit easier for us to scroll down in a Word doc. If we have to pull up a PDF, remember it takes a picture of the PDF, so it's a little harder for us to navigate on our phones because sometimes that's how we're recruiting. Okay, so I recommend either Word or both. How many pages? How many pages should your resume be? What do you think? I see a finger. One page?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me tell you that used to be the case. So here's the deal. The only person that should have a one-page resume these days is a recent college graduate. That's it. Otherwise, if you are a working professional any more than, if you're more in the workforce any more than 5 years, okay, it will make you look underqualified if you only have a one-page these days. Now, that was the prevailing wisdom a long time ago. Today, the common wisdom is 2 pages for most normal professionals. If you've been working for a while, like 20 plus years, go for 3. We're okay with that. The reason why it used to be that the smaller was better was because everything was in hard copy. And you didn't want us recruiters having to take the time to look at the 3rd page, right? So we were telling you, no, keep it short, keep it short. Now, 3 is okay, 4 is too much, and you don't want, unless you're in academia, don't go, otherwise anything longer than 3 pages is like a CV, okay? So for professional resumes, 2 and 3 is okay. Our cover letters actually read, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. No. Oh, well, at least for the most part, they're not read. 98% of the time, they're not read, literally. And it's not that you shouldn't write one if asked to, and it's not that you shouldn't customize it if you're actually going to take the time to apply for the job, but understand this. If you think that there are aspects of your background that you want to be noticed by the recruiter, and you think, oh, I'll put it in my cover letter rather than my resume, that's the wrong thinking. Because these days, the cover letter is no longer a letter that covers your resume. It's 2 separate attachments, okay? So what do we recruiters do? What do you think we click on first? The resume. And then if we like what we see, then maybe we'll go to the cover letter just to sort of back things up. Maybe, but not always, okay? Some people say, oh, well, should I combine it in one document? Here's the problem with combining it in one document is that sometimes they'll actually ask you for salary requirements, and if you put your cover letter in the same page as in the same document as your resume, and if you actually have an indication about salary, HR has a problem with that. Why? Because sometimes HR does not want the hiring manager to see what salary you need because they want to keep that confidential sometimes. So it's really better to keep them separate so that the recruiter or HR person can kind of say, okay, well, here's the competencies, but we're going to deal with the compensation on the side, okay? Thanks. All right, so formatting. Formatting is actually quite a big deal these days. I mean, people know you're doing this on a computer. They know that you've got the resources. And you really want to pay attention to this because you know what? First impressions count. They count not only when you walk into a room, they count on your resume. They really do. When I see resumes as a recruiter, because I do both, I do coaching, but I also do recruiting. When I have see a really elegantly designed resume, it says to me something about the person. First of all, that they actually took the time to format it really well. But number two, there's this sort of subtle kind of a, this person's kind of organized. They kind of have it together. It's a very, very subtle thing. Make sure that you really look at your font choices. An underused font that people just don't even think about using is small caps. Not regular caps, small caps, where you highlight, right click, and choose the little small cap thing. You can use that delicately. I'll show you in some of their samples that I have. Font choice, again, really subtle. I am a big believer in, if anybody's in the graphic world, a serif font rather than a sans serif font. So a serif font are the ones that have little footies, like Times Roman, Garamond, that kind of thing. A sans serif does not have footies, like Arial. Okay. For resumes, I believe it's just easier to read when the whole thing is in a serif font. That's my personal opinion. I tend to go with Garamond. I think it's kind of elegant. That's just my personal opinion. I go with a page border, okay? And you'll see the resumes that I show you. It really adds a very nice touch. But here's the thing, and that goes to the next one, is how you save your document. Now this is kind of critical these days. Remember we talked about the ATS, that applicant tracking system, cyberspace land? Yeah. So that ATS doesn't really fancy kind of bullets and all kinds of funky stuff. So here's what I recommend you do. Save your document, your beautiful, gorgeous resume, in a .text in addition to a .x, okay? Because when you're uploading it into that ATS, upload it into the .text version, because all of the ATS looks at are the words on the page. They don't actually see formatting. And by the time it gets to the recruiter's not seeing the formatting either. They're literally just looking at the content on your resume. That's all that they're screening. However, if you're sending it to a person through email, then use your pretty version. Does that make sense? Okay, just have both available. Okay. List your real name. Well, I don't mean like pseudonyms and stuff like that. But what I mean is, if your name is, your real name is Robert, but you go by Bob, or your real name is Elizabeth, but you go by Liz. I mean, like you really go by Bob, or you really go by Liz. I would recommend do Robert, quotation marks, Bob, Smith, Elizabeth, Liz, Smith. Okay. Just because it's easier for the recruiter to kind of know how you're called. So whenever you put it in quotes in the middle, they'll know what it is. You don't have to do that, but it's it's just easier, so we don't have to ask. A professional email address. Okay, so I have seen on occasion some funky personal email addresses, and the one that I always remember is years ago, a guy who, and this is Washington, right? So we have lobbyists and all of that, and I found this out later as to why he did this. He fancied himself a future congressman. I mean, he was a young guy, right? And so he put on his email, Senator Josh at like Gmail or whatever. I was like, really? And the employer, when I sent his resume, like, why does he have senator? I mean, it's just kind of odd. So, and I've seen funkier things than that. Keep it really, really clean. Okay, first name, last name, or something. All right. City, state only, not a full address. These days, because of cyberspace issues, cybersecurity issues, I highly recommend do not list your full address. City, state, so the recruiter knows where you live, and they can start to make some decisions about commute. But I would take out your 123 Main Street, right? Because you never know who's going to be seeing this. That's my current wisdom. I say cell phone and landline if possible. Okay, like how many people have a landline? Not so many. But if you do, put both, and obviously put the appropriate placer, because especially if you're on a phone interview, if at all possible, use a landline. I know it's so impossible, right? It's hard these days. But even if you are if you can't use a landline, make sure, I know this sounds like silly, right, to tell you, but you just have to take the extra step. Make sure you have 4 bars. Make sure that you're not going to drop the call. Stand in the right spot. You do not want that call to drop. You don't want anything interfering with your phone interviews, so make sure to have both if you can. I recommend to list your LinkedIn profile. Just have it right there underneath or next to your email address so they can look you up as well. I have a whole other presentation on LinkedIn, but here's my 2 seconds on that, okay? My opinion is that LinkedIn is the place to showcase your brand these days. You can't showcase it as much on your resume. Why? Because you can't write your resume in first person. You can't say I. Right? There's nothing you can allude to things in your resume in terms of where you're going, but there's no heart and soul. Would you agree? It's
Yeah.
just your accomplishments. It's your key words. It's your competencies, but it doesn't really say anything. LinkedIn, you've got this beautiful 300 words, 2,000 characters of a summary to really talk about your passions, your tribe, your lane, your value proposition, why you're going, what you're doing, and really talk to your audience.